Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. This is Molly Blankenship, and I am Community Advancement Coordinator at ACCE. I'm very happy to welcome you to this webinar on after-school STEM. We will begin momentarily as others join in. And in the meantime, please note that attendees' lines are muted, so you may use the question function at the right of your screen to ask any questions or share any feedback during the presentation. Thank you. Okay, everyone, I'll go ahead and get started. Just wanted to say welcome again. We're so happy to have you here today to learn about how your chamber peers across the country are working in partnership with after-school networks to advance after-school STEM as a part of their workforce development strategies. Before we begin, I wanted to share just a couple housekeeping notes. We have reserved time at the end of the webinar for questions, and attendees are joined in listen-only mode. So as I mentioned earlier, please use the question function in the webinar access panel if you have a question for me or our presenters. You can just type in your questions and we'll read them aloud for you. And in the case that we do, or in the event that we do not have time for each question, then we will be sure to respond to you individually after the webinar. The webinar should take about 60 minutes and is being recorded. And you can check the ACCE website, and it should also receive an email from me containing the recording within the next few days. And before we begin, joining us today to discuss their organization's work in after-school STEM are Gwen Hughes, Senior Program Officer for Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, Ron Ottinger, Director of the STEM Next Opportunity Fund, Alicia Benson, Chief Operations Officer for Greater Spokane Incorporated, Meg Lindsay, Director of Education and Workforce in Spokane STEM for Greater Spokane Incorporated, David Beard, Policy and Advocacy Director for Schools Out Washington, Cynthia Bennett, Vice President of Education for the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce, and Zelda Weimer, Executive Director of the South Carolina After School Alliance. So with that, we've got a lot of great work to cover, and so I'll hand it off to you, Ron and Gwen.
Thank you so much, Molly. And thank you all for joining us and your colleagues in this webinar. It was a pleasure to meet a number of you, I'm sure, when Carrie Pardo of the Mott Foundation and I presented at your annual meeting in Nashville. And this afternoon, we're going to hear from three highly experienced colleagues who are bringing best practices to utilizing after-school STEM learning to help prepare and inspire tomorrow's workforce, along with their after-school partners. Let me start with some introductions. My name is Ron Ottinger, as Molly said. And for nearly a decade, I was honored to serve as Executive Director of the Noyce Foundation. Now at STEM Next, which is seated with Noyce Funding, we are continuing the investing and momentum of that field building work with support for large-scale capacity development initiatives. As Director of STEM Next, our work is to engage learners everywhere. STEM Next is a national field building leader in increasing opportunities in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics learning for youth across communities, both in and out of school. I am pleased to be joined by my longtime colleague, Gwen Hughes, of the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. Our two foundations came together over 6 years ago to integrate STEM learning into the Mott Foundation statewide after-school networks that have focused for over a decade on building the after-school and summer fields to offer high-quality programming to millions of youth across the country. Gwen?
Thanks, Ron, and I want to echo Ron's thank you to all of you. I'm really happy to be here with you today and want to thank you on behalf of the Foundation for the important work that you're doing in your own communities and across the country. So just a little bit about the Mott Foundation. For those of you who may not have joined Carrie and Ron before, we have been supporting and investing as part of our education strategy high quality after school and summer learning programs for nearly 20 years. And a focus of this work has been really in bringing together partnerships and resources in communities across the country whether they be in cities, towns, or rural areas, to help our students achieve their full potential. A key strategy of this investment for the past 20 years has been something we call the statewide after-school networks, and we are pleased that we now have the 50-state after-school network, so a network in each state, with a lead funded by the Mott Foundation. And we have two of representatives of these networks who have joined us here today and you will hear from. We want to talk today about our partnership with STEM Next, which has been a really exciting effort that we have embarked on for the past 4 or 5 years or so to increase the skill development and workforce skills of our nation's youth. STEM Next, through this partnership, leverages the core competencies of our networks, which are both local and statewide. And these are professional development, quality and curriculum development, policy and communications, and evaluation. And we have found over the years that this combination of focus areas and competencies at the state and local level are really what is needed to build increased availability and opportunity for after school for kids. We still have a long way to go in terms of reaching the full demand for after school programs, which is about 20 million kids at this point. We are serving about 10.4 million kids in after school programs, so we have made progress, but we have work to do still. And the networks are one of our key strategies that we think will help us get there. Through this partnership with STEM Next, we see more after-school programs offering STEM learning and offering the curricula and content that is really effective with knowledgeable and trained instructors. And what is so heartening to see, of course, is we see young people more engaged in STEM-related subjects, imagining and exploring future careers as engineers, entrepreneurs, and more. Our joint collaboration over the years with the Noyce Foundation and now STEM Next has grown from an initial 9 states in 2012 to now 32 networks, scaling best practices in after-school STEM. And we have tracked the expansion. We are reaching approximately 800,000 children and youth across the country at this point. Just a quick program note, because across the country we have learned that education systems and stakeholders and other leaders talk about after school with different terms. When we use the term after school, we mean all out of school time programs that occur before school, after school, and over the summer. We thought that after just saying hello to all of you here and talking a little bit about our partnership, we wanted to get a sense of who is on the call with us today. So I'm going to ask Molly if we could do a quick poll so we can learn a little bit more about our audience and we can learn from each other. So a little bit more about what Chamber is currently partnering with after school, perhaps supporting programs, and what kind of level of involvement and partnership you all have.
Thank you, Gwen. I'll launch the poll now for everyone to see on their screens.
Great. So Molly, are you getting the results of this?
Yeah, so I've just closed the poll so everyone can now see the presentation slide again. And I will share the results. Gwen, can you see the results?
I can. So out of the current chambers on the phone currently partnering with After School, 19% of you are, and 81% of you are not yet. And that is very helpful for us to know. So we hope that today we can provide the information that will be helpful for those of you who are not yet partnering with After School in your respective communities, and help folks who are currently partnering perhaps dive a little deeper into those partnerships. So I'm going to turn it back over to my colleague, Ron.
Thanks, Gwen. You see on the screen right now the top line results from a major national study that we in the Mott Foundation conducted over the past year and a half, and then released first in March at the National Press Club, and then again at the U.S. News STEM Solutions Conference in May. And we did this study in 11 states with 2,000 youth in 162 programs, STEM programs. And we think this body of evidence will really help all of us understand the critical role that STEM learning plays in and after school in sparking the interest and curiosity of kids, particularly those who have been left out of the STEM economy and often turned off to STEM. Young girls, low-income youth, and kids of color, whether they be in cities, towns, or rural communities. And you see that we're seeing significant uptick in positive attitudes about STEM and interest and engagement. Critically, STEM identity, kids trying on the identity of being a scientist or being in computer science or technology, understanding the kinds of careers that may be available to them, and 21st century skills, particularly critical thinking skills and persistence. So this study, we feel, could be helpful to the partnerships with you in chambers across the country with your after-school partners to demonstrate the high value of the after-school field. That's why we're here today, to talk about the kinds of partnerships that we feel can be developed for a STEM-ready workforce, and why ACCE has joined with STEM Next and the Mott Foundation to help lift up best practices and help make the connections between chambers and the Mott statewide after-school networks so that we can really focus on this workforce issue together. Gwen, I'm going to pass it back to you to introduce the panel and moderate the panel.
Thanks, Ron. So what we wanted to do today is introduce you to some of our states and some of the partnerships that exist that can give you more of a sense of how chambers and after-school stakeholders and networks can work together to really accomplish their mutual goals. And to help you consider how after-school can support your workforce development efforts, today we are looking at two chamber colleagues along with their after-school partners who are going to share how they are engaging after-school STEM to help inspire and prepare students today. So we're going to start with our friends in South Carolina. Let's have Zelda and Cynthia tell us a bit more about who they are, the origin story of their partnership, and oftentimes with partners, the key part is how the partners get together. So we want to have them cover some of that, what the mutual benefits are and shared priorities, and what they have focused on together. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Zelda and Cynthia.
Thank you, Gwen. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Zelda Weimer, the network lead in South Carolina. When the network was formed in 2001, selected representatives were recruited based upon their involvement and interest in after-school and youth programming in the state. The leaders at the table identified the business community as an important stakeholder. So an invitation was extended to the chamber to help establish the South Carolina After-School Alliance, the official name of the network. Depending on the stage of the network in your state, the chamber's role may look different. Since we were at ground zero, the beginning, the Chamber helped the network create bylaws, establish our mission, and participated in the development of sustainability and strategic plans. Over the past 15 years, our partnership has grown and evolved. At this time, Cynthia is going to share how and why the Chamber partnered with our network.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Zelda stated, my name is Cynthia Bennett. I'm the Vice President of Education for the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce. And I've been at the Chamber since 1999, when we originally started with a federally funded grant of GEAR Up, which stood for Gaining Early Awareness and Readiness for Undergraduate Programs. We created high performance partnerships. So this helped us accept that invitation to partner with the network because there was a common ground for mutual benefits and shared priorities. As Zelda stated, we were the business side, the business community, the business leaders were concerned about after-school care because of their employees. And although our organizations had different structures and approaches, we worked together towards a common purpose and achieved our shared results. Our partnership was not automatic. Business leaders came with a sense of being more concerned about productivity of their employees, but over time it evolved to buying capacity and gaining valuable experiences, which led us to our mutual benefits and shared priorities. And I have to stress that in the very beginning, the Chamber was at the table and was highly engaged because we understand the importance of education. So therefore, preparing for that future workforce was a necessity. We wanted an educated workforce. Employers did not mind advancing and helping, but they wanted that foundation to be there. So therefore, we saw that need to be a part of those around the table. Then when it relates to building awareness of the importance of a quality program, as a mom of two boys at the time that all of this was going on, I understood being a working mother and having to decide, what do I do with my kids? So I added that extra piece of information and awareness to the business side of the community, business leaders, that, it wasn't just about having a program, it was about providing a quality program. As Zelda knows the story, after actually going on a site visit with Kimberly Carmichael, her technical assistance person, I removed my kids from their current after school program. And I became a bigger advocate for after school and the importance of it, and having that connection, that buy-in and support. Advocating for resources to support more professional development and technical assistance for the program staff. Every school that I touched, I found out what they were doing with their after-school program and told them they needed to join the network, be prepared to, take a serious look at what they were doing. Were they providing a quality program, or were they just babysitting? Were they helping the students with their extended day? Not necessarily doing their homework, but making sure that the students understood the importance of getting that homework done, being able to participate in the classroom. So our benefits and our shared priorities have always been aligned. We didn't start out that way, but we got there. Results of our partnership: the Chamber, again, had a better understanding of quality program. Business leaders understood if they wanted their employees to be productive from the time frame of 2:30 to 5 o'clock, they needed to allow and support after-school programs in their local areas, if not even at their businesses. And we did have one business that provided pickup and had teachers come over and work at their plant to assist. I served as the network board of directors, and I eventually became the chair. And again, my knowledge increased, and the Chamber supported me serving on that board and being their chairman. I was also the first after-school ambassador for South Carolina, and that experience in itself just advance things with the network. It gave us the opportunity to showcase the things that were being done in South Carolina, firsthand experience of bringing after-school providers to the table to hear their input, what their needs and concerns were, and how businesses could assist with that. We expanded the capacity and increased visibility at a local, state, and a national level. And the students and the parents, everyone, all the stakeholders saw that. And then I guess one of the other things I'd like to talk about is that as serving on as a member of the board of directors, I also served on the network state team, and we attended the Mott Foundation's national statewide after-school network conferences and meetings, and it was always interesting to hear a lot of people say, how do you get the chamber involved? Why is the chamber involved? For us, we were the voice of South Carolina. We were the voice of businesses. And again, our main goal and concern was making sure that we had an educated workforce, a workforce that would be able to take over and not have to be retrained, but come in ready and prepared to do the jobs. And that's pretty much it. Zelda, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. In addition, our partnership helped the network increase visibility and credibility among business leaders across the state and secured funding and in-kind resources for programs. The Chamber also served on special committees like marketing and PR and conference planning. As a result of Cynthia's leadership with the network, coupled with the Chamber's relationship with one of the largest power companies in the state, the Chamber was positioned to receive major funding to manage and support after-school programs across South Carolina. In closing, the South Carolina Chamber has set the tone for great partnerships because they believe there is no greater investment the business community can make than investing in the education of tomorrow's workforce. The Chamber has been one of the strongest champions for education reform in our state by supporting legislation requiring students entering the 11th grade to be administered the ACT Work Keys Assessment, meaning all 11th grade students in South Carolina now take a test measuring a range of essential work skills. Students take an assessment placed employment credential they can show to prospective employers to demonstrate their qualifications. Now, more than 1,500 employers throughout South Carolina recognize this National Career Readiness Certificate. And another legislation supporting the passage of the South Carolina Education and Economic Development Act of 2005. The act allows businesses and schools to work closely to ensure more of our students complete high school and are better prepared to transition into employment, further training, and post-secondary study. These legislations open the doors for leaders to look at the after-school space to engage students in STEM activities and inspire them to pursue careers they never imagined before, and help them gain skills needed for jobs in the future, as well as allow students to gain 21st century skills and experiences like leadership, communications, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, innovation, and teamwork. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Zelda and Cynthia, for sharing the story and for giving us these great examples. When you think about the fact that children and youth spend 80% of their time outside of school, it's a reminder for all of us about how important that time is and what an opportunity it is to help better prepare our kids. So what I'd like to do now is go to the other side of the country, in Washington State, where we want to showcase another example of a partnership with the After School Network and Chamber. So I'm going to turn it over to you, David, Meg, and Alicia from Washington State.
Great. Thanks, everyone, and hello from the Pacific Northwest. Again, my name is David Beard. I'm with Schools Out Washington, and we are the After School Network here in our state. As we were thinking about what kids need and what our states need, it was glaringly obvious that we have a lot of jobs that we can't fill. You probably know, thanks to our big businesses and many of our small businesses, Seattle has the hottest market in the country right now, and yet we rank 50th in the ability for us to fill our own open jobs with our own kids. So Schools Out Washington, recognizing this, and thanks to our partners at STEM Next and the Mott Foundation, we've been able to focus on STEM and on career-connected learning. And our role in that, we have several ways that we support programs to be able to support kids. One is through advocacy and systems building. So we know that businesses have these needs and school districts need a lot of support. So how can after school and summer programs be that bridge? And in that vein, both for advocacy, for more funding to support these kinds of programs, through professional development, where we try and give providers the tools that they need to be able to have high quality STEM learning, and then quality improvement. And I was excited to hear the Chamber in South Carolina recognizes how important quality is. If you're going to see youth outcomes, you really need to be a good quality program. And that really has led to our partnership, really our new partnership with Ritter Spokane Incorporated. I think the difference between Washington State and South Carolina is we're still kind of in the beginning of figuring out our partnership with the business world, and GSI has been a great partner in that. And how that developed, and you'll hear more about the Spokane story, so I won't go too much into that, but there was a lot happening in the Spokane region. Spokane is our state's second largest city, and is really the hub of the Inland Empire in Eastern Washington. And there was a lot of great work happening in programs across Spokane, and GSI and their partnership with Washington STEM came together to really support really good STEM learning both in and out of school there. And so at the state level, when I was looking around to see, hey, what businesses and what chambers are really already working with after school and summer programs, that's where we came upon Greater Spokane Incorporated and what they were doing there with our district and after school and summer providers in that region. So thanks to some mutual partners, I was able to contact Meg Lindsay, who you'll hear from, and really say, hey, Meg, do you want to come to Los Angeles and come to this meeting of after school networks and all of our partners and maybe learn a little more about what we're doing and what the network wants to do? And luckily she came down, and we had another business leader from the west side of the state and really said, hey, there's some cool things going on. How do we partner together? And then how do we start selling this across the state? Which really leads us to where we are now, which was Schools Out Washington is providing quality improvement and professional development support to providers there. And GSI is providing some connections to business and really some STEM learning essentials that after school and summer providers can use. And our next steps is figuring out how do we take the model in Spokane and really blossom that across the state. So we're excited about seeing where we can take it from here. We're also excited that that they have good relationships with their legislators, and how can we also build greater advocacy to get more public support for programs and STEM learning across the state. So we're both taking what we know is best and what we're best at and combining that and trying to take that statewide. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Meg and Alicia, who can give us much more of what happened in Spokane and where they're hoping to go next.
Thanks, David, and welcome everyone. This is Alicia Benson, and I have the great honor of serving here at Greater Spokane Incorporated. And David, I think you did a really great job of kind of setting up how we've come to know each other. And for an organization like GSI, we're really excited about that, because we've been doing work in the education space and in the after-school space, nearing 20 years, and yet the focus on quality and the key opportunity for partnerships across our state is really essential as we tackle these important challenges for our communities. I want to, for all of our chamber partners on the phone, I want to be able just to place set Spokane. You've had the opportunity to see a great picture of our community. And on the next slide, it shows just a sense of our membership makeup. And I think the other thing I want to say is that we're about 300 miles due east from Seattle. We sit close, about 30 miles from the Idaho state border, and truly are the inland empire, and have, as David mentioned, we're the second largest community in the state of Washington, and so we're large, have a large urban center, but actually serve a very significant rural population as well, and a kind of tri-state area, as well as part of our friends from Southern Canada that come here to Spokane to access services, predominantly healthcare. 1 in 5 of our jobs in Spokane today is a healthcare-related job. And so just wanted to give you a sense. The other thing I say to place at Spokane is that if you don't know where we're at, you may have heard of the Gonzaga Bulldogs. We're proud that they're often in the top and playing in the national championship for basketball last year, so a home team proud here. So to talk a little specifically about our work, on the next slide, one of our foundational pillars to our strategic plan is Achieve. And as I mentioned, we've been doing this work for 20 years, and it was just over the last, I'd say, 5 years that we've been able to really solidify the role that an organization like Ritter Spokane Incorporated, the role that a chamber plays in this space is really essential. And part of that has been the fact that when we think about being an economic development and business development organization, the number one thing we hear every day is about talent. It's about the skilled worker and about the competitiveness that we bring to the table in that regard. And so we set a strategy that's focused on education attainment. And it's not just about the number of skilled workers, but really this idea that we have a goal in our community to achieve 60% attainment by 2025. And that the work culminates with that adult worker, but it's really about that pipeline, and for our community, a significant emphasis on the STEM skills that are necessary to compete in the workforce. And going to the next slide, we've done this through being able to develop a portfolio of work that's focused on this pipeline of education attainment from the cradle to career. It's a portfolio that's a combination of partnerships, programs, and policy that at the kind of foundational to it all has a focus on systemic change that's led by business and done in partnership with the education partners and community partners. We have a focus on increasing high school graduation, increasing post-secondary entry, retention, and completion, and increasing and retaining the talent and growing jobs. From a programmatic standpoint, it's about, that's really the space we can intentionally engage our businesses. The partnership elements are essential for how we align business and education through things like our committees and advisory groups. And then the policy aspects that, again, are a huge lever for a chamber to play, and how we're able to advocate at the local, state, and federal level for the needs of our community and growing and retaining that talented workforce. So and then on the, I think the next slide gives you just a sense, this work is complex, and as a business organization, you know, how we thread that needle, and one of our greatest strengths as a chamber and business organization is our ability to convene many of the entities that you see on the table across that education and community pipeline with business. And that just gives you a snapshot of some of those players here in our community. To delve more deeply into the partnerships that David was talking about in our work that exists here around STEM, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Meg Lindsay.
Good afternoon. This is Meg Lindsay. I'm the Director of Education and Workforce, and also have the pleasure of directing the STEM network here in the Spokane region. As Alicia mentioned, we wanted to talk a little bit about the strategies for increasing attainment. That would be the next slide. As Alicia mentioned, the business and education partnerships have been a driver for a lot of our work. Our education and workforce team has been working across the age continuum in attainment, but today we really want to focus on how the inclusion of the Spokane STEM network into the chamber has created some strategies around robust career-connected learning opportunities and a framework that allows us to lead with our business members. This was kind of an aha moment for David and I as we were in Los Angeles and meeting for the first time, really, about how chambers can connect with statewide networks such as Schools Out Washington, and then at the local level start to implement some of those opportunities. Not only do we connect from a programmatic standpoint, but we're also connecting through Washington STEM as one of the 10 STEM regional networks across the state. So Schools at Washington has been working really hard on creating quality criteria for the programming across the state. And through GSI's engagement as one of the 10 STEM networks, we're working on the programs themselves, and that really gives us an opportunity to engage business in this quality program and scale across the region. So the next slide is really about looking at a career-connected learning framework, and through our work with Washington STEM at the state level, we've utilized our partnerships with our business and education entities and pulled together a community work group that concentrated on career-connected learning and developing a framework to highlight the engagements and pathways to many of our high-demand careers. So this framework is really a continuum that starts from career-connected awareness and exploration into how we prepare and train for the skills that we need as we look toward developing talent for our businesses. Schools at Washington and David can utilize this work across the state in other STEM networks and other chambers working on talent development as well. We wanted to kind of highlight one of our programmatic pieces, and on the next slide we have one of our programs that GSI is involved in and has been creating and implementing through our region. It's called Business After School. This program was selected as a National Governors Association Learning Lab just this last year, and we're really in our 4th year of implementation on this. And we focus on STEM fields and skills across many of our high-demand sectors. So our business members are leading this experience by opening their offices and their organizations to host students in a workplace setting. And by accessing these opportunities after school, we're able to engage not only our students and teachers, but also parents, guardians, and the influencers of these students as well. It's really an awesome opportunity for a student to go into a business and really take an in-depth look at what those careers look like inside that business and how their skills can work across a variety of industry settings. So on the screen, we just wanted to show you a little bit of our successes, the companies that we've engaged so far, the number of students, how we're engaging the educators. And I think the really important piece of all of this is that as we enter a business setting, we're really engaging more business professionals than we do in, let's say, a career fair opportunity or something like that. So we really call this our Flipped Up Career Fair. So I wanted to leave you with that programmatic aspect and once again tie that back to we're able to take that quality program and those quality criteria from an organization like Schools at Washington and really help our businesses implement that into this kind of setting. So and I'll finish from there. Thank you.
Thank you, David and Alicia. And do we want to hear from anyone else on your team there? Okay.
That was Meg too, so I think we're good.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. Yep. Thank you so much. That really gives us some great examples to really think about. And what we thought we would do next here is ask a couple of questions of our panelists, and of course, most important, see what questions you all may have. So I'm going to start off with a question to some of our panelists, but would ask all of you to be thinking of questions that you may have, and Molly is going to help us field those questions so we can answer them. What I might sort of hone in on here and ask our Washington team to answer first is you both have talked a little bit about this, but could we hear a little bit more from each of you about how does each side or each partner here, the chamber and the network, benefit from the work that you're doing?
I can start, and what's great about having GSI as a partner is there's a couple of pieces. One is that connection to businesses and to knowing what businesses need. I think, and as we've started to blossom in this work, and I know my partners at ACCE will know that that isn't necessarily our skill set, to know what businesses need and how do we extract that and support both their employees now and their future workforce. So having that connection and knowledge base has been very important to our work. And as we think about what kind of curriculum and supports we give to providers, we can really hone in on what they really need and not what we think that they need. So that's one benefit. Another benefit is their access to resources, and I don't mean funding per se, but just that they have such a connectedness to folks in the community and to different kinds of creative resources that we can bring in front of kids. And I know that's happening there at the local level, and they're helping us think through, well, how do we expand that statewide?
And this is Meg from Spokane, and I'd pony on that. So being able to take Schools Out Washington's quality criteria and really be able to engage businesses with that has been really important for our work in this region. We aren't the experts for quality criteria, and so it's wonderful to have an organization that's really stepping in and working on what that evaluation process might look like. And I also want to add that having David and his organization at the statewide level really allows us to do more advocacy both at the regional and state level when we think about what that quality criteria and funding through the legislative process looks like for these opportunities.
And Meg, we have to ask you, I think David had mentioned that he invited you to one of the national conferences. Is that right?
He did.
What motivated you to go? Because it's hard to fit all of these things in.
It was wonderful, and I actually hadn't met David or Schools Out Washington at that point, but we have on the local level been working with our United Way, which has been housing an informal education group for quite some time. And so as part of our education partnership here in the region, we were very involved in that, and they invited us along with David to attend that. So we went with the United Way and David to that Schools Out opportunity.
And this is Alicia, and I would just add that I think part of what drives Meg and I and drives the work here and those kinds of opportunities is to hit on that quality piece. So our lever point is to engage business, and our businesses that are engaging in this space, they don't want to just kind of half do it. They want to be able to create really intentional experiences that impact kids and impact their trajectory, and in the end ultimately benefit their workforce. And so they look to us to be able to help inform and help design and help drive what that quality should look like from a business perspective. And so we really look for opportunities like having the opportunity for Meg to be able to join David and the team down in LA for that conference, because we have to continue to get smarter, and what are the tools that are out there, and how do we leverage those partnerships so that we are creating quality partnerships and programs here, and that truly engage our businesses, because just like all the rest of us on the phone, they're really busy too, and so we have to be able to have that toolbox of things that helps us to really get them to engage. Otherwise, they'll find a different place to spend their time.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to check in with Molly to see if we have some questions from the audience.
Yeah, thank you, Gwen. We do. So the first question we received, and this is really for our foundation partners on the phone, both from Mott and STEM Next Opportunity Fund. The asker wanted to know if any of these networks or if any of your work reaches into Canada yet in terms of programs or funding.
Ron, do you want to start?
Sure. We in some of the work that we're doing with the In and Out of School STEM Learning Ecosystems initiative, we're doing some work up in the Vancouver area as a first foray, but there's not a major presence in Canada, but that's our first foray, especially with the Science Center in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm. And I would say for the foundation right now, this is a U.S. strategy. We do have some international investments in different areas, in the environment and in civil society, but right now we are in the U.S.
Great, thank you. And then the next question we had is, following the South Carolina presentation, someone was interested to know if they were able to learn what questions were included on the 11th grade exam that was mentioned, and if that info could be shared. I think they were really interested in learning what information and what questions employers were able to see. Zelda or Cynthia, do you have any comments on that?
This is Cynthia. That test was administered by and provided by ACT. So maybe if you contact your local ACT rep, but I do know there is a website, or at one point in time there were work key sample tests out on the website, but I'm not sure if they still have those up. They're in the process of revamping some of the tests and the profiles that the businesses are looking for to match up the skills. So I would just say basically check out there, because we don't have a list of all the questions. We just refer people to the ACT website and the work keys sample test.
And I want to add, with the ACT test, they also do an evaluation and will provide on their website information from, I think, all of the states, what students are interested in, what career path they're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay. Thank you both.
Mm-hmm.
The other question that we have right now is, and I'll read it sort of verbatim here. It reads, the largest issue I find is convincing organizations and agencies that they do not need to recreate the wheel, and that collaboration has more impact than several silos. Is this something that any of you encountered, and if so, how did you tackle it?
Maybe what we could do is start with Zelda and Cynthia.
Sure. I think that, and this is Zelda, I think that in most situations, it's you encounter those challenges, but probably the most important strategy in those circumstances is education, and educating your potential partners on, how after school, for us, it was how after school can contribute to the goals and objectives of, the potential partner. And once those potential partners understand that, I think there's a common understanding of how you can partner. The other thing is that usually education and businesses, we have two different languages. And and so understanding what we mean when we say social emotional learning, the same as 21st century skills. So it's just kind of understanding and educating each other.
Yeah, and if I can add, one of the things I thought about was, I think with the first question that was thrown out there about, how do you benefit? For us, it was a matter of, as Zelda has already stated, you got two different worlds. You've got an education side and a business side. And then on the business side is you get your work done, you move. But one of the things that we saw when we established partnerships was it's about starting that foundation off with open, honest communication and letting them know, yes, we may be a business, but we also have human resources. It's not always about the dollar. And we saw that the support and involvement basically led to an increased awareness by all, from the provider, the business, the community. The more they saw the partnership and the enhancement, it benefited the students. We had one business partner that, basically told their school district when they wanted to support after-school programs, it's not about us, it's about the kids. And I think if you keep that in the bigger picture, the frame, you can stay focused.
Thanks, Cynthia. I think we have time for maybe one more question, Molly.
Sure, and just as a reminder to attendees who are on the line, if we have not gotten a chance to get to your question, we will follow up individually after the webinar to make sure we get all questions answered. And I've seen that someone has raised their hand, so just a reminder that we are using the question dialog box for any questions, so be sure to submit any thoughts, feedback, or questions there, and we'll be sure to follow up. Our last question for the Q&A section for today is someone has asked for Alicia and Meg, if you could go just into a bit more detail about your business after school program, specifically how you got the program off the ground and started.
This is Meg, and that's one of my favorite topics. Thanks for asking. You know, about 4 years ago, we were at a career fair, and we had 50 businesses, and we had 1,500 students come through that career fair, which is an awesome opportunity for all students in our region. But when we asked our businesses how many students they connected with, it was a pretty low number. And so we came back and we thought, you know what, we need to do this a little bit differently. So we decided to flip that career fair model up, and instead of taking students to the fairgrounds to meet with business representatives, we thought, how would it be if we took the students to the business to see all facets of what that organization looks like? And I think the important piece of that is that we sat down and wrote a request for participation to put out to our business membership here at GSI. And part of that was we asked them to design what they thought would be a good model for entertaining students in a 2-hour period. And by giving them that opportunity, we had a huge response rate on those that wanted to participate. And so we were able to let them pick a day, pick a time, decide how many students they'd like to have coming to their workshop, and then for them to help drive the content with a little bit of suggestion from us about hands-on activities and how to equate some career and educational pathways to that career. And that was just a huge driver in the participation. What happened that we didn't expect was that instead of having 2 business professionals interacting with students across a table from a career fair setting, we found that we had more than 17 business professionals in each business participating. So being able to really scale that across the employee base of the business has been a huge driver in providing more opportunities for job shadowing, in-class speakers, and more career-connected learning opportunities.
That's great. Thank you so much. And thank you all for your questions. As Molly said, we're going to try to get responses to the ones that we can't get to today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ron to make some closing remarks.
Thank you, Gwen, and thanks to all of our colleagues who presented on the panel. I have to say I learned so much as I watched and listened today of the tremendous work that's going on, and whether it's on the after-school side or the chamber side, you know, the focus on quality programming, on results, on getting kids interested and prepared for potential careers. There are lots of common interests that I think we learned about. We've seen, as STEM Next has learned over the past 6 years, that the Mott Foundation statewide after-school networks are really such powerful entities. And as we saw from Zelda and from David in particular, that the folks who are working from the Mott side and their partners in the chamber, the chambers in their areas are such great entry points for this work. You see from the screen that we have information for you to consider. We are, with the Mott Foundation, proud to lead in this space and to partner formally with ACCE. We thank you all for participating. We're so pleased to see that almost everyone who began with us on the webinar has stayed to the end, and that's a great sign. And we look forward to working with you further. If you haven't downloaded the one-pager on the partnership, please do so. And now, Molly, I'd like to pass it back to you to wrap things up.
Thank you so much, Ron, and thank you, Gwen, and to all of our panelists. So as Ron mentioned, and as you can see on the screen, as part of ACCE's work in this area, we've been working and are going to continue to develop a number of resources for our members who are either already or, like many of you, would like to engage in after-school STEM. As you can see, our new Chamberpedia page on after-school STEM contains ACCE resources, chamber best practices, as well as research reports, and will continue to be grown and updated over the coming weeks. An ACCE's chamber case for after-school STEM and a one-pager with more information on the Mott statewide after-school networks and our partnership with both the Mott Foundation and STEM Next are linked here, and the one-pager about our partnership is also included under the handout section on your webinar access panel. And so you can download them directly here, and also whenever I follow up tomorrow to share the recording and these documents, you'll be able to access them there as well as on our website. And we just want to take this moment to encourage you to take advantage of these resources, to engage with the Education Attainment Division, and stay in touch with us as you continue to move the needle on this sort of work in your own communities. And so with that, I just want to thank you all again for joining us today, for being a part of this discussion. Many thanks to our presenters on the line, and congratulations on all of your fantastic work. As I said, the recording will be available shortly, and we will be sure to follow up on any questions that went unanswered. And thank you again, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of your weeks.
All right. Thanks, Molly.
Thank you.
That was great. I thought, as I said, I learned a lot myself. Great work that you all are doing in South Carolina and Washington.
You brought back memories.